Today we'll be rolling the 4146 dice set. Let's see if it outruns the 7. Stay tuned. There's an endless debate in the craps community. Can dice setting actually create a player advantage? Between the grip, the load, the launch, and the landing, the sources of variation seem endless. But if we can minimize those variables with consistent technique, can we actually find an edge? How many rolls can a specific set survive before the dreaded 7 ends the run? We're putting the physics to the test and collecting the raw data. Is it skill or just plain luck? Let's find out on this episode of What Are the Odds? Thanks for joining me today on the rollout of the 4146 dice set. I hope you're doing fantastic as always. If you're new here, we're going to roll the 4146 dice set as consistently as we possibly can to see if we can outperform the 7. We will throw this dice set continuously until we produce a 7 10 times. Our first roll here is a 3. We're going to log that into our dice tracker, and we'll continue doing this until we 7 out 10 times. So we'll speed things up for the remainder of the video and break down the data on the other side. See you there. So how do we do with the 4142? Well, we barely came in north of 60 rolls, 62 total. That does lend itself to a light side dice set strategy. Our longest continuous streak between sevens was 15 rolls, nothing to write home about, but we see a very lopsided distribution curve here, so let's go look at the numbers individually. So let's start out by looking at our waterline here. We did have two numbers that outperformed the 7 on an individual roll-by-roll basis. Those were the 4 and the 6. Statistically speaking, the 4, 6, and 5 were our best performing numbers. And it's also worth noting that the 3 outperformed the standard as well. The 2 was the only number here on the low side or small side of 7 to not achieve the standard. Conversely, our worst numbers with this 4, 1, 4, 6 dice set were the 9, 8, and 11. Also, the 12 did not roll once, just like its sister 2. And speaking of sisters, let's go check them out. This really shouldn't come as much of a surprise, but the 4 and the 10 was the best sister set here, with the 4 being one of our most rolled numbers, and the 10 actually nearly hitting its standard on the tall side of 7. And since we saw so much favorability on the small side of 7 versus the tall side of 7, together it pretty much balanced out. As you can see with the 3 and 11, 5 and 9, and 6 and 8. Each of those sister sets missed out by a single roll to the standard. And the extreme 2 and 12 were the big losers here, as neither of those showed up once during our roll set. Over to our hard ways. We did just barely beat expectations here by a 1/10 of a roll, and this was only because of the hard 6. Looking at the 8 and the 10, we rolled 11 8 and 10 numbers, but only one of those was a hard. And the horn rolls here were nothing to get excited about. They completely missed expectations. The 3 was the only outperformer, and we had 0 consecutive hits. In summary, the 4142 lends itself to a light side dice set strategy. We expected to bust out by 60 rolls, but managed to get 62 in this data collection session. The 4 and 6 were the only 2 numbers to beat the 7 on a roll-by-roll basis, and the small numbers, with the exception of the 2, were the only ones to exceed the standard. And on the flip side, none of our tall numbers met the standard, with the 9, 8, and 11 statistically being our worst performers. Our hard ways barely met the standard, and that's all thanks to the hard 6 being the only outperformer of the hard ways. And between the hard 8 and the hard 10, there was only one of those that came out in a combined 11 appearances of an 8 and a 10. And our horn rolls severely underperformed, with the 3 being the only outperformer, and we had no consecutive horn hits out of 6 opportunities. And that's going to do it for the 4146 dice set. Thank you as always for taking time out of your schedule to join me on this channel. I greatly appreciate you. I hope you have an amazing end to the rest of your day, and I look forward to you joining me on the next episode of What Are the Odds?